format of tonight's meeting is to have a guest speaker share their experience, strength and hope on how Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery is working in their lives for 15 to 20 minutes. Tonight we have asked Lucas to share.
I'm Lucas. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Lucas.
I'll just briefly touch on what it was like for me, and then go into what happened once I got here. I picked up at quite a young age, as most of us do, kind of around 13, 14, and my life became very unmanageable very quickly. Got expelled from a couple of schools early on, about 13, 14 years old. So it didn't take long for me to start to veer down that path into my addiction. The first big event that kind of took place around my drinking was at about 17. I was in a fight outside a pub, and I got hit in the head, and it broke the main artery behind my temple and caused internal bleeding in my brain, and I ended up in hospital, and I was on life support for a few days. And when I came to, and a couple of months after the surgery, I went to see a neurologist, and I went with my mother took me down there, and I went in and saw this neurologist, and he said, "Mate," he said, "you can't drink or take drugs anymore." He said, because if your scar tissue rubs against your brain, it can cause you to have a seizure and you could die. And I remember walking out of that doctor's office, and I walked out to my mum, and she said, "So what did he say?" And I said, "Oh, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about." And I can now see that was like, this doctor was trying to come between me and my drinking and everything else, and it just wasn't going to play. It wasn't going to happen. And my life went along. I worked until I was about 24. The progression for me, at about 22, I moved out of the industry that I'd worked in for a lot of years, and it was the restaurant industry, and I went into business for myself, and I was quite successful within that business. And at 23, I was doing quite well. I was making good money, and I had a nice sports car, and was travelling really well. And by about 24, it was just all gone. I was so deep in the grips of my addiction. I just couldn't function on a day-to-day basis, and I couldn't be present and do the things I needed to do. And therefore, I lost that business. I lost everything I had in that regard. But I didn't see it at the time. I moved deeper and deeper into a heavier crowd, and things got a lot worse. At about 25, I landed in the middle of an attempted murder, and I got sober for a few months within the rooms, and I did a lot of meetings, and I didn't get sober because I wanted to get sober. I got sober because I wanted the heat to wear off, and I wanted the crime commission and all the people that I was kind of being presented with in my life, all the trouble to go away. And after about 3 months, all that kind of all these charges subsided, and everything kind of my life was looking all right. And I can remember it clear as day. I just had that moment where I went, I don't know if I really am. I reckon I could just have a couple tonight, and I'll be all right tomorrow. And as you probably know, a couple didn't quite work out to be a couple that night, and things. I remember it was about 4 or 5 days before I picked up again after that, and it was about 2 or 3 days, and then I was just back into it, and I was just back in that cycle, and and it got a lot worse for me. It got a lot. That was just the tip of the iceberg. As it progressed, a couple of years later, I spent a period of time in prison, and I remember being in prison and speaking to my old man on the phone and saying, when I get out of here, I'm going to really get my shit together, and it's going to be different. And I had all these ideas, plans of like grandeur, what I was going to do. And when I got out, I was back out there drinking within 24 hours, and it just went from bad to worse, and I lost house after house, and I lost my family out of my life. I lost, the people that cared about me, and in the end it was just me, and I landed, this was January last year. I ended up in Queensland, and I remember I turned up on my family's doorstep, and I said to them, I need you to give me some money. I've got to pay these guys, I was all busted up, and I was in a really bad place with some really bad people, because that was where my drinking took me. It took me into crime, violence, drugs, and prison. And they just said, no, there's no more. We can't help you. And it was what happened at that point was I had this group of people that I was associated with. They turned up. My family lived in a gated community, and they turned up at the front of their gated community and asked the security guys to let them through. And the security guys didn't let them through. And there were 3 carloads of guys, and these guys had flown up from Melbourne. And so you can imagine I was in pretty deep. And there was only one way I was going to leave that place with them, and it would have been in the boot of a car, and I probably wouldn't have been seen again. And they didn't get in, and it didn't work out that way. But that was where I was at by that point. Putting my family, putting the people who had always been there for me in harm's way in front of everything else just wasn't even a consideration to me. Like it just didn't matter, because I needed to get what I needed to get, and I needed to do what I needed to do, and everyone else came second. And anyway, I ended up staying at my family's place, and I detoxed there for about 7 days. And at the end of that 7 days, my old man said to me, he said, mate, you can't stay here. He said, you need to either go to a long-term rehab or you need to go back to Melbourne. He said, you're not welcome to stay here. And, and I was like, how dare you? But if I look at it now, where I'd put them, the fact that they let me even detox there for 7 days was unbelievable. And I didn't want to go to long-term rehab, and I came back down to Melbourne, and my dad flew down about a week later, and he took me along to my first meeting. And for those first couple of months, I did about a meeting a week. I had the worst sponsor in the world, which was myself. And after consulting that sponsor, we agreed on a 9 meetings in 90 days type program. And that's if you knew, that's a really bad way to go. And after a couple of months, I was really struggling. And I was in a worse way than when I'd come in, because what booze gave me was that buffer between me and life. And I didn't have to deal with me as long as I had something between me and reality. And once I took that away, it was like, whoa, my head was just the insanity. And I remember ringing up my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I'd been sober about 4 weeks, and I said to her, I reckon we should get a place together. And she went, what are you fucking talking about? I thought, now I'm sober, everything's better and it's all going to be great. And little did I know the turmoil I'd put all these people in my life through. And anyway, I hung in there and got along to about a meeting a week, and I realistically only went to those meetings so I could ring my old man after the meetings, and I could say, so how you going? And he'd go, oh yeah, good. I'd go, yeah, I'm just on my way home from a meeting, like I was doing it every day. And I wasn't. And I got to a point at about 3 months where my brother actually rang me up, and he said, why don't you come over to this meeting with me on Sunday? And I went over with him to this meeting on Sunday, and I was sitting in this meeting, and it just came over me that I was in the right place with the right people doing the right thing. And when you've felt apart from and disconnected from everyone, other than feeling a little more connected when you're drinking, it was an amazing experience for me. I can now see it as that point of surrender for me. Where I just I really threw in the towel. And I heard a guy talk about it. And he talked about surrender, and he said, when a soldier surrenders in war, he sits down on the sidewalk and he places his weapon in front of him, and he does nothing. He just waits for direction. And I really like that analogy, because that was kind of where I got to at that point. And I went along to a meeting the next night down at Albert Park on a Monday night, and it was a friend of my brother's. She said, look, I live around the corner from you. I'll pick you up and take you to this meeting. Some young people there, and there's a guy that might be there I'd really like you to meet. And this guy got up and he shared at the meeting, and he shared his story, and he had a very similar past to me, and he'd been down the path that I kind of went down when I was out there. And he said, And I really related to what he said. And afterwards, she said to me, "Look, this guy I want to meet. Come and meet him." And it was that guy. And it's funny, it's kind of the old saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And that was what happened for me. And this guy, he came and he would pick me up from my house, which was over the other side of town, and he would take me to meetings every other day of the week. And he held my hand through early recovery, and he just walked me through it day by day, a day at a time, and that was all I could handle, And we started to talk, because we'd drive to this meeting, and sometimes it would be 45 minutes each way, and we would talk about the first few steps, and he took me through the first 3 steps over a period of the next month or so, and he helped me to really understand where things were wrong for me, and it helped me to understand that how unmanageable I was, and the fact that I was probably the worst person that could be left to manage my life at that point. And at first I was a little taken back by that, but as he explained to me, like, if I looked at the evidence of my past and where I'd gone and where my life had been taken in relation to everything, he said, if you're running a business and this is the direction your business had gone into, wouldn't you sack the manager? And I thought, he'd be gone. And he goes, well, you need to sack the manager, and the manager's you. And then he went on to explain to me, in the second step, what a power greater than me was. And he explained to me that early on, he said, a power greater than me is you. A power greater than me is the fellowship of AA. And he said, can you understand? Can you understand that? And and at that point, I was really cooked when I came in. And I really needed really simple explanations of things. I sat and I would sit there reading the book, and I would read 2 lines, and I would get to the end of the page, and I would have been off, like, thinking about the chick that was at the coffee shop where I went the morning before, before I would even get through a paragraph. And so I just didn't have a very, very good attention span, and I really needed someone at that point that could really help me to keep things really simple, and that's what this guy did, And he walked me through that stages of early recovery, and as I got along, a few months along, I had a couple of experiences. Like at about 6 months, I remember I rang someone, and it was an older sober member, and I said to them, I've just had this couple of days where my head's just been quiet. I said it's just amazing, like, because I hadn't experienced that ever. And they said to me, look, it'll pass. And I thought, fuck you. And it did. And, but it was little things like that along the way that really helped to keep me coming back, because it's those little moments of relief and things happening in my day. And, anyway, the thing that was probably paramount to my recovery in early days was sponsorship, and it was the real essence of my recovery has been that one alcoholic talking with another alcoholic, making that other alcoholic feel a little less alone, and that really was what just helped, like, kept me propped up for quite a few months, But I looked at this guy when I was in those first few months, and he just had that peace and serenity about him, and he never told me what I needed to do. He never told me, you need to do this, you need to do this many meetings. He just asked me what I was doing. And I was smart enough to work out that if I wanted what he had, I should probably do what he did. And we would meet each day, and we would go to a lunchtime meeting, and then we would go to a meeting in the evening. And I did about 2 meetings a day for about the first 6 to 8 months. And then, and then I transitioned back into the community a bit and went back into work. And, I was... and I consulted him all the way along the way, because he'd gotten me through that last day, and he'd helped me get through the next day. So it was probably good for me to take the advice of someone who was really had my best interests at heart. And I got to about came up to about 12 months sober, and he'd taken me through the steps in a really basic manner. I didn't have the capacity to absorb a lot, like I said, and he really just helped me. Like, I wrote out my life story, and we had a look at that, and then we had a look at, we had a look at all the people that I'd harmed and stuff. But at 12 months, I decided to go back through this. I remember actually at about 11 months, I I was in a situation, and it was a really awkward situation, and things it just wasn't it wasn't a good scenario, and I just got to this point, and I was freaking out about it, and I heard my sponsor's voice in my head just going, just fucking hand it over, mate. And I thought, fuck you. And I did at that point, and I really started to understand that the way I thought the scenario or whatever it was in my life was playing out affected me exactly the same as if it were the case, and to elaborate, if I think that someone doesn't like me, that affects me the same as if they were to come up to me and say, I don't like you. And, that was a real like, EMC squared moment for me, it was a real like light bulb moment. And at that point I decided, I needed to go through and have a real look at this stuff and formally go through the steps. And I went through the steps as they're outlined in the big book. And, I had a look at, and it was explained to me that, that I only have 3 basic relationships in my life: my relationship with myself, my relationship with God, and my relationship with other people. And what my sponsor explained to me was that 4 and 5 were about my relationship with myself, and 6 and 7 were about my relationship with God, and 8 and 9 were about my relationship with other people. He said, and once you get yourself right in all of those areas, and you have a look at all that stuff and you can move on from it, he said it will bring you closer to being the person that God intended for you to be. And that makes a lot of sense to me today, and I've had some experiences in my life within and out of AA that totally reflect that. I heard early on, that the fellowship will get you sober and the steps will get you well, and that has totally been my experience. I had an experience at work a few months ago where I hired a young girl, and she was only about 17, and she had no industry experience, and she had a whole set of issues going on in her life with relation to she had a single father, and her stepmother was epileptic, and she had 6 siblings whom she cared for on a daily basis and looked after because her mother couldn't be left alone with him because of her condition, and we gave this girl a job, and I gave her a chance to get her foot in the door and get some industry experience, and the sense of fulfillment that came from helping someone else in that regard it's just unexplainable. And where that is in comparison to where my life was, a matter of 2 or 3 years ago, is it's just unrecognisable, and that's I think, kind of relates back to me becoming the person that I was intended to be, and being somebody who can be there to help other people. The other thing I heard early on around the rooms was, the first year is about you, and then it's about helping others, and there's been times where I've really struggled in recovery with my own stuff, within my own personal life and all that kind of stuff. And I remember sitting with a guy, one night after a meeting down on a bench down the road from here, and talking to him for about 2 or 3 hours, and I had some really kind of just shit stuff going on. And I spent a couple of hours with this guy, and it was amazing how that just removed me from myself and all my own set of issues when I was focusing on someone else. And and that's been paramount to my recovery, because I don't know whether it's doing a lot of meetings. I don't know whether it's being involved in service. I don't know whether it's helping other people. I don't know which of those things is what keeps me sober and keeps me happy and keeps me in a good spiritual condition. But I can tell you, with my experience from when I was out there, I'm not willing to roll the dice and find out, because where my life was a couple of years ago before I came here was so far down the scale that, look, I don't for a second doubt that I have another drink and another drug in me. I probably have plenty more of them in me. I pretty much can guarantee I don't reckon I'd have another recovery in me. And so just on that, I'm just not willing to roll the dice and find out what's on the other side. But thanks to the group for inviting me to share, and thank you.